which is located in Columbus, can help you get these people with this experience that you're going to need in order to demonstrate that your staff, your employees, your directors have the requisite background for this. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about zoning. That's going to be its own section. But the other thing that you're going to need to show, and most commonly this is just a sign-off from whatever municipality that you're operating in, is that you are operating with all zoning regulations. Quite a few of the applications didn't have this portion. So if you are coming up to the deadline and you can't get your municipality for whatever reason to sign off on all of this, and for those of you who have dealt with different building departments, that may ring very true to you and hit very close to home. Not having that particular part of this is not going to be an instant ban. There were enough applicants that didn't have this and still got through and got their licenses that just showing that you're in the process can be sufficient. Okay. After your business plan, which goes through basically, and we just hit the highlights, the next part is your operations plan. And for this, again, lean on those people that you just found with this experience for this. Have them help you craft this operations plan because it's going to go into every possible detail of your operations. You can't be vague, you have to be explicit. Policies and procedures, agricultural cultivation techniques, experience in any kind of horticultural, any kind of agricultural, the complete list of any medical marijuana varieties that you're proposing to be grown. And be careful on this one because this one is hard to change later. You can certainly go through the process, but if you want to change your mind, that can be a difficult process to go through. You're going to need facility specifications, your cultivation environment, layout, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. Basically, they want you to show them rather than tell them exactly how you're going to do every single part of this. And finally, in this part, if you are the attorney or if you're the business who is looking for the attorney, is your faculty staffing and employment matters. There is, for cultivators and processors, although it's a little different for dispensaries, mandatory training that all of your employees are going to have to go through, whether they are type 1 or type 2 employees. And you need to have your plan to train them already set and already ready to go. If you don't have a plan to train them, there are the Department of Commerce and the Board of Pharmacy are in the process of providing these training programs. Cleveland School of Cannabis also provides a lot of these training programs that you can either have them do or you can ask them for these programs and you can include in your application. The other big part of this, not only when you just need designated areas, which we just talked about, policies and procedures for best practices for security, which we're going to go into a little more detail on, but the documentation chain. This is probably going to be your most onerous set of requirements once you get up and running, is documenting where and when and how everything has been transported, where you got the original cannabis, where it was grown, how was it processed, when it was moved around, and this can be pretty myopic in scope. And if you are subject to an inspection on this, they're going to literally be asking, when was this lot of cannabis taken from this growing area to this section here to be processed? Again, rely on existing processes and procedures that have already been approved by the Department of Commerce, by the Board of Pharmacy for this. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. In fact, it's not advisable to reinvent the wheel. Okay. The other part of this that is literally, that, you know, aside from your operations plan, this is going to be the most points that you're going to be able to get in a cultivator's application, is your quality assurance plan. And for this, lean heavily on those people in your organization or that you're advising on who works in the agricultural sector. That's going to be the most directly applicable to these kind of quality assurance plans. And they're already going to be familiar with this for best practices, for packaging and labeling, for any kind of pesticides, fertilizers, agricultural products. Your horticulturalist, when you set that up, whoever your chief horticulturalist, is already going to have some familiarity with this. Go ahead and rely on them, and again, rely on the existing documents and the existing applications that have been submitted on this to see what best practices are. Okay. The other big part of your operations and your quality assurance plan that you're going to need to verify and that you're going to need to establish is your waste disposal system. This is a fairly onerous regulation that's in here, but it's also very important. The purpose of this is to prevent people from using the medical marijuana waste for recreational purposes. And there's a huge step-by-step process in here. I only have the key components here that you should be very familiar with. You're going to need a Type 1 key employee. That's a manager, that's an officer, that's an owner who does all of this. This cannot be subcontracted out. This can't be done by a Type 2 employee, someone that you've come on just to assist in the process, like a local grower. They take this very, very seriously. And the Board of Commerce will reduce your score if they don't think that your plan for lawful disposal is sufficient under this. And this also, make sure that when you do this application, you have all of your disposal requirements in place. Be ready to record when you put your marijuana refuse into its compost pile or its water or whatever manner you're using in order to dispose of this. And have this ready to go before you even do the application. One of the things you have to justify is the reasoning for and the description of the disposal. There are enumerated ways that both the administrative code gives you in terms of disposing of this, and you can't even just pick one. You have to justify your decision. So work with your horticulturalist, work with your security advisor, whomever that is, to make sure that you have a legitimate reason for the method that you're choosing to dispose of this waste. Okay. We have to talk about security. Although the weighted score on this is only, and I say only, 40 points for a cultivator, this is probably going to be one of your more essential functions here. Some of the primary objections to even having the medical marijuana program to begin with is thinking that this is going to be an attraction for criminal elements, for people who are trying to get on the premises, for people who are trying to sell medical marijuana illegally. And this is not something that you want to do yourself or you want to do in-house. I want to point, Tim Dimoff is sitting right here. He's one of the security expert that we work with on this. He already works with several cultivators. Obviously, you don't have to use Tim, but I would advise that you use Tim. The security expertise and the people that you work with are already going to know this stuff. You aren't going to have to reinvent the wheel. You're not going to have to make up your own security procedures. Use a third party for this as your best practice, like Tim. As part of that security plan, which we're going to get into, is your record keeping. Okay, and this has to go, and this goes with that. This is another of the really onerous processes here, and one that you should have lined up before you even do the application. You got to keep for 5 years all of the records of your disposal, all of the records to your sales, all of your transportation records, any kind of samples that you've set out, and all of your security records, any kind of inventory tracking. Be ready for this up front. Have a process here. If you are already familiar with and working with a human resources third party, they can provide a lot of these resources already. GMS, located in Richfield, is one company that you could rely on for that. But work with that third party. Have that set up beforehand, because a failure to account for how you're going to do these record keeping can really affect your score, especially on the security front. Again, going into the security part is the inventory controls. And on this, you're going to need also to rely on your security expert and have them help you in drafting your plan, because they're going to be the one doing it anyway. You're going to need to track through the inventory tracking system all of this information: the cultivator's name and license, registered name of the strain, unique plant identifier, and you're going to have to do a comprehensive inventory of all medical marijuana at the cultivator. And this has to be done by hand by a Type 1 employee. This is another one of those things that has to be done by a manager or an officer, and you can't subcontract that out. What's that? Oh, all right. Okay. My mic looks, all right. Can everyone hear me back there? All right. So, and this goes into the financial record that we talked about a little bit before. Not only are your investors and your officers and your employees going to be under a microscope, but the business's financials are going to be under a microscope as well. You have to provide and have on premises any kind of financial tractions, any kind of the financial condition of the business. Any kind of contract for services provided. Again, a human resources company can assist you with this. They already do a lot of this in maintaining this. Or your firm can assist in this and just making sure that you're keeping literally every kind of contract you had with any kind of subcontractor available for any kind of instant inspection. And this includes the accounting and tax records related to the cultivator and to the processor and all investors in the facility. And that requirement doesn't go away. So if you are advising investors and advising officers as part of the company, when they do their initial application and saying, all right, we've disclosed all of this, that's an ongoing requirement. And you need to make them be aware of that they're going to have to continue to provide this financial information on request to either the Board of Commerce or the Department of Pharmacy. I'm sorry, can you say that again? The record keeping can be outsourced. That is one of the things that you don't have to do in-house. Obviously follow best practices if you're going to outsource that with the normal indemnifications and everything like that, because that failing an inspection on record keeping is a really good way to get that license suspended or revoked or something along those. So whether it is advisable or not to do that, that's a discussion you're going to have with your client. And it's going to depend on what service that you're using for record keeping and whether you trust them to do that and whether you're willing to risk the entirety of the company on this third party's ability to maintain these records. Okay. Again, for your HR section and also for your security section, you're going to have to keep extensive employee records. Most of these are best practices anyway for anyone who is running a larger organization. But when we're talking about, especially some of the dispensaries, these small organizations, they may not be as used to it. And when you're advising people, maybe they don't even have that background or business experience. And you're going to need to have a serious conversation with them about their employment practices, about their record keeping, and about their ongoing training, which you're going to have to maintain.